Good stuff. Hey, everybody. Do you guys like the movie WALL-E? Is that an okay clip? Okay. That's a cute little robot. Well, hey, I'm pumped to be up here with you guys. We've had a good school year, haven't we? We've had some great moments in here, and it's just so good for me every time I get a chance to share with you guys. I want to take us into something new. This month, the month of April, we surveyed you over the last several weeks. Did some of you take these surveys? You remember these surveys? Okay, all right. We surveyed you. And so we're going to jump into a series together this month called Survey Says. And I'm so pumped because we're going to tackle some issues and some challenges that I think a lot of you can relate to, and situations that you might find yourself in from one time or another. I really believe over the next couple weeks, some of the stuff we're going to talk about is going to be, at least I hope, uniquely relevant to you, important to you, and I hope it's uniquely helpful to you. And tonight, what I want to talk about and dive in with you guys on is this whole area of dating relationships. Is it cool if we talk about that tonight? Like we focus the whole message around that? You guys good with that? Is that okay? Do I have your permission? I don't get some good vibes right now. I'm not feeling okay, we've got one supporter in the house. Thank you. Well, you're here, and I've got the mic, so it's going to happen. This is what we're going to dive into. I'm really excited because as we surveyed you and we talked about it and as we were preparing, we saw just a lot of good input from all of you on the area of dating relationships. And I don't know that there's any season of life that compares to high school when it comes to how much dating relationships are on your mind or how relevant it might be to you. Now, I know for some of you, you're not in a dating relationship. Maybe you haven't been in a long time or ever. And so my hope is that this can be helpful for the future for you when the right girl comes your way. And it's just that moment where you've really got to get it right, like you can't mess it up at that point. You feel me, guys? Like you've got to know what you're doing out there in the world of dating. Or the right guy just swoops you. No, that doesn't happen. Just, whatever it is. So here's the deal. Here's what I want to do. You guys gave us a lot of good feedback. And one of the things that I thought was super interesting is a part of the feedback that you gave was like advice that you would give to the opposite gender. Do you remember this? Advice that you would give to the opposite gender. Now, there's a problem with this, and maybe two. First of all, I noticed as I read through the responses, at least 50% were not super serious. So if I'm looking at the guys' responses, it might be like 75% were not super serious. That's okay. That's all right. But we did have some good responses. I want to ask the guys, guys, what do you think the girls would tell you? If they were to give you advice in the area of dating relationships, what would they want you to hear? Like, how self-aware are you guys? What was it, Rhett? We got some feedback from Rhett. Yes. Rhett, what?
He started saying something.
You started to say something. I want to hear it. You have no clue. You have no clue. Okay, well, I'll help you guys. I'll help you guys out. So here's what the girls said. I'm actually quoting these. And there was a lot more solid feedback from the girls, if I'm honest. Girls' advice for guys. Here we go. Take the initiative. That's pretty good. Don't avoid hard conversations. I wish guys would talk about their feelings more. Communicate your feelings. We want to hear what you are truly thinking. Communication is key. Communicate to my face, not through a screen. Oh, okay. Okay. There were several girls that said respect boundaries. One girl said have your own boundaries. I thought that was good. That was really good. Be patient, be kind. One girl said, girls like food, I'm serious. So, guys, that's what you need to know. So, girls, what advice, if they had any, would the guys want you to hear in the area of dating relationships? What do you think? At least Rhett started to try. So what do you think? Don't overreact? Okay. That would be really good if one of the guys had thought to say that, but They didn't. They didn't. So a few guys joked about wanting some space at times, so I'll give them that. Let me game is what one guy said, so okay. The guys, several of them, talked about communicate more clearly. Is that good, guys? That reflective? Okay. Keep it simple is what one guy said. Another guy said, be blunt. I'm just reading them. Oh, I like this one. This is good. This is, well, I don't know. Maybe this is not. No, this is not good, but we'll read it anyway. One guy said, ask me out. It's not complicated. I'm not smart. I don't have telepathic powers. All the guys feel that one. A couple guys talked about how important it is not to argue a lot. I noticed that as a theme. One guy said, be modest. I thought, hey, that's good advice. It's good advice. You know, tonight I want to see if I can be helpful in the area of dating relationships, whether it's future relationship for you or current one. I have to admit to you that I'm not an expert in 2019 high school dating relationships. I know that. I know I'm not. And at the same time, I just have some things on my heart for you. And you can take them. You can not take them. It's okay. I won't be insulted if you disagree with me. I do want to start here, though. I think we all know the Hollywood version of how dating relationships are supposed to go. I really believe that we all know it. We all see it. We're all surrounded by it. We're supposed to find the right person, and then we fall in love, and then we put all our hopes and dreams on them for all of our future fulfillment. Like one Disney phrase sums it all up, right? They lived happily ever after. Like that's the message that we get on dating relationships. And here's what I believe. I think that it is not working. I don't think that's working. And I don't have all the answers for why that's not working, but when I observe dating relationships and in the time that I've had the privilege to know and work with teenagers and to see what God is doing in your lives, I have seen so many wounds come from dating relationships, whether high school or maybe for some of you future in college. I've seen so many wounds. I've seen so much hurt. I've seen so much regret. And I believe the very thing that God intends to bring so much good has somehow turned into something that has done so much harm. And what I want to do is look at some biblical advice for relationships, and then I want to take you into some things that are on my heart. And so I'm going to read to you Colossians chapter 3, verses 12 through 17. You don't have to turn there. It's not going to come up on the screen. I just want you to soak it in tonight. Just hear this as I toss this out at you. Colossians 3. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another. If any of you has any grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord forgave you. And over all these virtues, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, since as members of one body you were called to peace. And be thankful. Let the message of Christ dwell among you richly. And whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. Now, I want to give you some good news tonight. As I looked at some of the feedback that you guys gave and the answers that you put down on that survey, I noticed something right away. I noticed that as a youth group, and I know some of you might be guests tonight or you might be visiting, but I think for the most part, as a youth group, we're really not too far from Colossians 3. I think Colossians 3 is a great place to put our focus when we think about dating. But you guys are doing pretty good in your perspective. You know, we asked you about some of the key areas when it comes to dating that I think are pretty important, and our senior interns helped us put this together. We asked you some things that were a little more lighthearted, like to see how important they were to you when it comes to dating. I'm curious, what number do you think the average is across this youth group on a scale from 1 to 10 as to how important your person that you're dating, how important it is for them to be attractive? What number do you think the average is? Anybody want to take a stab at it? Yeah, exactly, like almost exactly for both guys and girls, because I separated them, almost exactly a 7 out of 10. I think that's a solid answer. Not too important. It's not everything, but, fairly important. I thought that was good. Funny, got an 8.5. Both guys and girls were right there together. Hardworking, successful, another lighthearted one. Guys were like an 8 when I talk about how important that was for them when they're looking at potential girlfriend. Girls were an 8.5, so guys, you got to work hard. Okay. Responding quickly to my text messages and my snaps. What do you think it was? Let's go from 1 to 10. 10s, 9s. So funny. This was the lowest one. Let's see. Guys put a 6 out of 10. Girls came out almost exactly a 5 out of 10. And our senior interns looked at this and they go, lies. So I don't know. Maybe that's wrong. Maybe the numbers are off. Guys asking girls out. Guys gave that, we didn't do 1 out of 10, and I should have, because now it's going to get confusing. We did like a not important, somewhat important, very important. You remember that? Guys were like right in between somewhat important and very important. So we'll kind of call it a 1 to 3 scale, 3 being very important. Guys were at a 2.5, girls were at a 2.3. So apparently, all of you agree that the guy should, for the most part, ask the girl out. I think that's pretty good. The guy should pay. Now, this was the biggest discrepancy in this whole survey. The guys gave that like a 2.3, like definitely over somewhat important. The girls gave that a 1.8, like under somewhat important. Like it's not really even somewhat important. Is that for real? Girls? So you want to pay? Wow. I didn't know that. That was a total surprise to me. Hey, we also asked you about some things that were more important. Things like family. Across the board, guys and girls. Gave it a 9 out of 10, family. We're dating to get married. And that one came out just a little above somewhat important. And I think that's right where it should be. Like, I don't think you have to totally think about marriage right now, but I think it should be on your mind. And I think that should be a huge goal. Boundaries. I was so encouraged. That was the highest one on that portion of the survey. Came out to setting boundaries. Came out to 2.7, almost across the board. Extremely important. I'm so proud of you guys for saying that. And then I looked at the most important one on that survey. And it was one of those 1 out of 10s. And it was, how important is it to you that the person that you date has a strong faith in Jesus? And that was the highest rated answer. And it's all because you were at youth group and you had to say that, right? No, I don't think so. That one came out a 9.3 out of 10 for our youth group. And when I looked at all the different answers, the majority of every age range and gender, the majority of the people who took the survey from our youth group, the majority of our 9th and 10th grade guys, the majority of our underclassmen girls, upperclassmen guys, upperclassmen girls, the majority said 10 out of 10. And I was so encouraged by that. And I thought, you guys are not far from this. You guys are on the right track. And so I want to ask the hard question then. And it's, do you really know how to live this out in the area of dating relationships? Do you really know what this needs to look like when you go out into the world of dating relationships? And here's what I believe. I believe there's a subtle but significant change that God would have almost every one of us make when it comes to this whole area. And I believe when we think about dating relationships, that God, instead of having us look at what's true about them, he would have us care a whole lot more about what's true about us. And tonight, I am not here to try to set some standard for who you should date. And that's an important thing, but that's not my goal tonight. Because if I could say anything about dating relationships, the standard that should be set that's most important in this area is for you. In fact, instead of setting a goal for that person that you date, Like how gifted they are, how successful they're going to be, how funny they are, how good looking they are. I think they're the goal that needs to be set. The most important goal is a goal for you. Savonai's youth pastor said something over the years that I believe is so significant when it comes to dating relationships. And if you could hear one thing tonight, if you forget everything else that I say, this isn't even my statement. This is from a guy named Derry, Pastor Derry. He said this to me when I was your age, and it has stuck with me. And I think it's the best advice I have ever been given. And if you will receive it and if you will follow it, I believe this could unlock your greatest blessings in this area. And here's what he said. And I'm going to quote this as if I'm saying because it needs to be true for me. And it needs to be true for you. Until I am complete and content in my relationship with Jesus, every other relationship is a hopeless attempt to fill the void. We were talking with our senior interns about this survey and about this message in the office the other day, and I was asking for their thoughts on the results that came back in. Alex Duffus said this: if you don't have Jesus, the way you look at a relationship is going to be wrong every single time. Claudia Hitzman said this: if your heart isn't full, you won't have anything to pour out. And so I want to help you tonight, not to figure out who to date, but to figure out what this needs to look like for you. Like, how can you live this out in the area of dating relationships? And the first thing that I would tell you is, instead of finding the right person, just become the right person. Colossians chapter 3, verse 12, therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. There are a ton of parts of this whole area of dating that you have no control over. I mean, you can't control whether or not you feel attracted to someone or they feel attracted to you. You can't control how their family feels about you or how your family feels about them. You can't control how funny they are. You can't control how successful they are. But I believe more important than any of that is you becoming the right person. You becoming the kind of person that another individual who you could spend the rest of your life with can love and care about. And I believe our only hope to becoming the right person is in our relationship with Jesus Christ. Our only hope in the kind of change and transformation that we need is found in him. And so I tell you again, until you are complete and content in your relationship with Jesus, every other relationship is a hopeless attempt to fill the void. All of them. Until we are complete and content, we're going to be lost in the endeavor of finding the right person, and we'll never realize how important it is to become the right person. How much more significant it is when we look at who we are rather than who they are. Because when we're the right person, we're going to attract the right people to us. And in God's timing, whatever he desires, I believe his blessings and his goodness will come in this area. Let me give you another one. Instead of falling in love, walk in love. Walk in love. I don't even know if I can convince you of this, if you'll believe me, but I can just tell you that I'm convinced that love is a choice. I believe it's under our control. I've heard people say, hey, I fell out of love. I think, no, you didn't. Because love is a choice. Love is not an emotion. Love produces emotion. Love can create incredible emotions, but it's not an emotion. Love is making your problem my problem. Love is choosing your needs over my needs. Love is being others-centered rather than being self-centered. Instead of falling in love, walk in love. Choose love. Do you guys know what the divorce rate is in America? Everybody gives the same answer. What is it? 50%? It's not 50%. It's actually 40%. The divorce rate in America is 40%. Do you know what the divorce rate is in India, where almost all of the marriages are arranged? I saw 2 different articles on this. One said 4% and the other said 1%. And they gave lots of great reasons that I'm not going to dive into and all kinds of science behind it. But I think what it comes down to is it's choosing to walk in love. Check this out. Colossians chapter 3, verse 14. And over all these virtues, what does it say? I think it's up on the screen. What does it say? Over all these virtues. I don't know. Is it up there? Sorry. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's underlined even. Over all these virtues, put on love. Put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. Ephesians chapter 5, 1 through 2, it says this: follow God's example, therefore, as dearly loved children, and walk in the way of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us. You know, the next time you're at a wedding, listen to the vows. Listen to the vows. I got to be a part of Suzanne's wedding. Where's Suzanne? Oh, she's here somewhere. She's back in the back somewhere. I got to be a part of Kim's wedding. Yep. And I got to be in front of them as they vowed to take each other, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, to love and to cherish until death do us part. I mean, if that doesn't tell you that love is a choice, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish until death do us part. And you know, I get it. Sometimes walking in love means walking away from a relationship. Sometimes that is the most loving thing you can do for them, is to say, hey, I'm not the right one for you. But I just want to encourage you to see a different picture of love, a picture that comes from the love of Jesus, that we would walk in love as he first loved us. Because until we are complete and content in our relationship with him, we will never know that love. We will never fully be able to comprehend what that kind of love looks like. A God who went to the cross for you and for me. A God who looked at all of the times that I rejected him, and yet he still chose to die for me. A God who chose to walk in love. Let me give you a final one. I would just tell you to fix your hope on God. Fix your hope on your heavenly Father. Because you know this. I bet you already know this. When you put your hope in that person, they always disappoint. When you put your hope in that person, you find yourself back at that great void that only God can fill. And maybe you've heard the phrase, you know, this person completes me. This person is my soulmate. And I want to tell you, no, Jesus completes you. Jesus is your soulmate. And he is the only one who will do that for you. Fix your hope on God. Walk in love. Become the right person. And I believe God will bless you. You know, I had the privilege of beginning a dating relationship my senior year of high school that ended in marriage. And I dated my wife, Kelsey, all through my senior year. And the hardest time in our relationship ever to this day was at the end of our senior year. It was right now, if I was a senior. It started in like February. We were doing fine. In fact, February was a great month for us. That was when we had our first kiss. It was in February. 7 months after our first date. Thought that was pretty cool. I guess not. Okay, that's fine. Yeah. And I think early March, late February, it's probably earlier than that, she got invited by a friend to go to Florida for spring break. And I was like, cool. And then she started to talk about it all the time. And I wasn't going to go because I play baseball, and so I had to stay home for spring break. So I stayed home, and she didn't talk about much else for like a month. And I became kind of frustrated with that. I don't know if you would, but I was. And I didn't tell her that. I bottled it up inside like any good guy would. I kind of kept it in. And I just listened, and she was, whatever, going to go to spring break. And I began to, I'm going to have you wait, actually, because we're going to play video here in just a second. Sorry. You're okay. Don't worry. Just stay here. I don't want you to have to break. No, come back. So anyway, So anyway, she's going to go spring with a friend, and I started to get jealous and started to get frustrated, and I didn't tell her that. And then the time came for spring break to come, and she did this thing for me. It was actually pretty cool, like throughout our dating relationship so far. She would make a CD with songs on it. I know you guys don't do this anymore, so you probably have no idea what I mean by this, but she would like burn a CD. Have you ever heard of that term? Probably not? Okay. She would burn a CD, and she would put songs on it, and she would title the CD Songs That Remind Me of You. It was really sweet. She put love songs on there. It's a lot of cool music I'd never heard, and so songs that remind me of you. And she'd put Beatles songs on there and things like that. So, spring break comes, she's about ready to leave, and she hands me this CD. This is the CD she made, Songs That Remind Me of You. And, I was like, cool. So she leaves. I pop the CD into my CD player. And about the third song in, there's this song on the CD, and I want to play it for you. Okay, I'm going to play you this song. Go ahead.
I heard about your trip. I heard
Good song. Come on.
your souvenirs.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
I heard about the cool breeze and the cool nights and the cool guys
What?
that you spent them with. I guess I should have heard of them from you.
What?
I guess I should have heard of them from you.
What?
Well, don't you see? Don't you see?
No, I don't see.
The charade is over.
What?
And all the best deceptions and the clever cover story awards go to you. So kiss me hard, 'cause this will be the last time that I'll let you. You will be back someday, and this awkward kiss that tells of other people's lips will be of service to keeping you
That happened. I really felt that song. I just really felt that song in my soul. It just hit me, just right in the soul there. I checked the weather every day of that spring break, and every day I hoped that it would rain. And I think 5 out of the 7 days she was gone, it rained hard. She hates when I tell this story. Because she was so excited for spring break, she didn't even think about the words of the song. She just threw it on there. So that's her side. Cool. So she comes back from spring break, and I don't say anything. April, right about now, I am so busy with baseball. I played baseball. I worked 16 hours a week. I was a part of a mission team in my youth group. We would have 3-hour mission team meetings on Sundays. Then I would go to work at about 4 o'clock, and I would work till 1 a.m. on Sundays. I was busy. And May came around, and we had prom. We did the prom thing, and her and I were not, there was just distance between us. We didn't talk a lot, and something was not right. And about that same time, I'll never forget this, right in the middle of April, kind of the end of April, somebody came to me at our youth group and said, hey, I just think you should know there's this other guy in our youth group that likes her. And told me who this guy was, pointed him out to me. This guy was so cool. Like, he was a drummer in the youth group. Props to you, Zach, drummer in the youth group. Jack, both you guys. I mean, just dressed cool, super cool dude. And I thought, man, this is not good. I remember in May, a bunch of us from the youth group got invited to a bonfire. And I had to work. It was a Saturday night. I had to work. And so I got there a little bit late, and I got in there. There's a bunch of students around this bonfire, and I get there, and I try to find a seat. I'm trying to find Kelsey, and I see her. She doesn't have a seat next to her, and she's sitting next to that guy around that bonfire. And so I sat on the other side of that bonfire for a couple hours and just watched this girl that I liked and was dating sit next to this guy. I left, went home, got up the next morning, went to church, did my thing, got to work. And by the time I got to work, I worked in like an elderly home and I was custodian. And by the time I got to work, I was so overcome with grief. And I'm kind of embarrassed to say this, but I was just so overcome with grief that I fell on the ground in this closet and cried. And in that moment, as I'm struggling, I began to pray. And I just began to ask for God's help. And I kid you not, right when I began to pray, I heard this little whisper in my heart. And I remember it to this day. It said, you know, Brad, if she were to leave you for this other guy, she's not the kind of girl you want to be with anyway. And I will have someone better for you. And in that moment, I felt this overwhelming peace come over me. That the God of the universe had me. That he knew my future. That he loved me. And that he had all power to take care of me. And when I see in Colossians chapter 3, verse 15, when it says, let the peace of Christ rule in your heart, I believe there is nothing better that you can have in a dating relationship or any relationship. Because when the peace of Christ rules in your heart, when you are complete and content with Jesus, that void that we try to fill with these other people, instead it becomes a fountain that overflows. And I went home that day, and I don't know what happened, but I began to live and function around this girl that I loved with a peace that ruled my heart. And God brought us through. He brought us back. He made us stronger than ever. And God has blessed me day after day, and that woman is the greatest gift God has ever given me on this planet. And the only reason I have her is because instead of trying to find the right person, God helped me become the right person. Instead of hoping to fall in love, God helped me to walk in love. Instead of fixing my hope on her, I fixed my hope on him. And when I became content and complete in my relationship with Jesus, I was ready to have all of God's blessings. And I believe you will be too. You can remember one thing. Remember what my youth pastor told me. Until you're complete and content in your relationship with Jesus, every other relationship is a hopeless attempt to fill the void. Jesus, thank you for that truth. Thank you for speaking to us and drawing us back to you. Jesus, thank you for choosing to love us even when we're so unlovable. Jesus, thank you for the hope that we have in you. And I pray that that hope and that peace would fill this room. And I pray that it would rule our hearts. And I pray that you would help us to leave this place and leave this moment so firmly convinced of how necessary and central you are. So firmly and deeply convinced of our need of you. And Jesus, I pray then that you would bless everyone in here with all the good and all the wonderful relationship future stuff that you have for them. God guide us. God help us. God be with us. And it's in your name I pray, Lord Jesus. Amen.